It started with a party invitation, but not for my daughter. "Please don't bring Emily, she's too loud." That was it. No explanation, no apology. Just a line that sliced deeper than any insult ever could. Have you ever been so stunned that your body didn't even react? I stared at that message, numb, while Emily was upstairs practicing how to say happy birthday without stuttering. She never got to say it. They never gave her the chance. But I gave her something better, the truth, the fight, and a stage of her own. Want to know how a mother turns pain into power? I still remember the way my chest tightened when I read the invitation. It was digital, of course, because Evelyn liked things to look sleek and modern, even when they delivered something as ancient as cruelty. The banner on top was cheerful enough. A magical garden party for Lily's 10th birthday. Below it were details about the venue, dress code, RSVP, until I reached the final line. "Please don't bring Emily, she makes people uncomfortable." I read it 3 times, hoping I'd misinterpreted it. The 4th time, the words only dug in deeper. No emojis, no LOL, just kidding, not even a damn period at the end. Just cold, blunt rejection. Of my daughter, from her own family. I sat there at the kitchen counter, frozen. My coffee had gone cold. Emily was upstairs humming a song from Encanto, blissfully unaware that her existence had just been labeled inconvenient. I told myself not to overreact, that maybe Evelyn didn't mean it like that. That maybe it was about the venue's guest list being tight. But even as I reached for excuses, I knew exactly what it was. She didn't want my daughter there because she didn't fit her picture-perfect, Instagram-worthy aesthetic. Have you ever stayed silent when someone crossed the line just because they were family? I have, for years. I swallowed hard and tapped the screen off, but not before a soft voice behind me said, "Why doesn't Auntie want me to come?" I turned around slowly. Emily stood there, still in her pajamas, clutching her stuffed owl. Her eyes were wide, not sad yet, just waiting for me to lie, waiting for me to protect her from a truth I never should have had to explain. "She's just worried it'll be too noisy. There'll be lots of people," I mumbled, forcing a smile. But I knew I'd already lost her trust in that moment. She wasn't stupid. She just turned and walked away, dragging the owl behind her. Later that night, I lay awake replaying every family gathering where I'd let Evelyn cut me down with passive-aggressive praise. "Sam's always been the creative one," she'd say, with a patronizing smile. Even if she can't keep a job for more than a year. Everyone would laugh, including my mother, who'd sip her wine and nod like it was some harmless joke. It wasn't. When I got divorced, Evelyn called it predictable. When I started freelance work, she called it risky. When Emily was diagnosed with ADHD, she said, "Poor thing, must be so hard for you." Never asked how Emily felt, never asked anything. And yet, when Evelyn needed someone to co-sign a loan for her luxury salon, guess who she called? I still remember the way she hugged me tight and whispered, "I won't forget this." She did, or pretended to, until she made me feel like asking her to include my daughter in a birthday party was asking too much. And my mother, always elegant, always silent, once said to me over brunch, "You know, Evelyn's had to work very hard to get where she is. She can't afford distractions right now." She meant Emily. My child was a distraction. On that same vacation to Lake Tahoe 2 summers ago, I remember Emily tripping on the deck and cutting her knee. Everyone rushed inside to get ice. Evelyn was already there. She looked pale, nervous. "She startled me," she said. "I tried to catch her." But something about the way Emily clutched her arm, whispering she pushed me, haunted me. I chose to believe Evelyn. I didn't want to believe otherwise. What kind of mother does that? A tired one, a lonely one, a woman raised to protect the peace more than the people she loves. That weekend, I sent Evelyn a reply. "Thanks for the invite. Emily and I won't be attending." I didn't ask why. I didn't confront. I just stepped back, like I always did. Emily didn't ask again. She stopped humming, started drawing more. One morning, I found a sketch of our family, stick figures, everyone smiling, except for one figure standing far off to the side. She wrote "me" under it. It took everything in me not to cry, but the crack had already begun. In me. In the story I told myself about who I was in this family. And when enough cracks form, something eventually shatters. The morning of the party, Emily sat beside me on the couch, legs crossed, hair in soft curls I'd brushed out myself. She wore a pale yellow dress with tiny daisies stitched across the collar, her choice. "Even if I'm not going," she said quietly, "I still want to look nice." I nodded and smiled, my throat too tight to speak. We didn't go. Instead, I took her to the bookstore, then out for ice cream. We played it off like it was a special mother-daughter day, but I saw the way she glanced at the time on my phone every few minutes. At 3 p.m., the party's start time, she stopped asking questions. That evening, while Emily sat at the kitchen table, drawing silently, I curled up on the couch and mindlessly scrolled through Instagram. My stomach clenched when Evelyn's story appeared at the top of my feed. I shouldn't have tapped it, but I did. There she was, perfectly curated in a lavender jumpsuit, holding a cocktail and spinning around in front of giant helium balloons spelling Lily. The garden was lit with fairy lights, catered food, a balloon artist, face painters, and kids, at least 24 of them, all laughing. Then the camera panned to a little boy twirling in place, clapping and shrieking. A hashtag appeared, dark neurodivergent joy. Someone had even added a rainbow heart. I froze. He wasn't Emily, but he had ADHD. I knew because Evelyn had told me his mother talked about it too much at a school meeting, so it wasn't about noise or disruption. It was about Emily. I stared at the screen as the video looped. Something inside me broke, not all at once, but like a slow, deliberate snap of something that had held for far too long. I looked over at Emily, still quietly sketching. Her new drawing had me and her standing in the rain outside a closed door. Inside, behind a giant window, were kids and cake and music. She hadn't even looked at Evelyn's story. She didn't need to. She already knew. Later that night, after putting her to bed, I sat on the floor of my closet and pulled out the old wooden box my father left me. Inside were papers, some old photos, his fountain pen, and one yellowing envelope marked "Trust Details." My hands trembled as I opened it. There it was, his original will. He had typed out everything, then hand-signed it in thick blue ink. Equal division of assets between his 2 daughters, Evelyn and me. A clause set aside for Emily, too, in the form of an education fund. I remembered the conversation when Mom had said, "It didn't make sense to keep it even. Evelyn's the one who took care of the funeral. She was the one stable enough to handle everything." And when I asked about the will, she'd shrugged. "It wasn't finalized, honey." But this was final and notarized, with a different lawyer's name on the bottom. Not the one Mom and Evelyn had mentioned, I sat there for hours, going over every line, until the paper felt like it had been burned into my memory. The next day, I stood in my kitchen holding that will, still unsure what to do. Rage boiled beneath the surface, but it felt directionless. What would I do? Confront them? Take legal action? Risk blowing everything up just to get a little justice? So I did something I hadn't done in years. I called my old therapist. When I sat in her office that Thursday, I felt like I'd aged a decade. She poured me tea, just like always, and waited. I couldn't speak for the first 5 minutes. Just sat there with my fingers wrapped around the mug. Finally, I said, I found something that proves they lied. About money, about my father's will, about everything. She nodded gently. And how do you feel? I don't know if I have it in me to fight them, I said. I don't know if I'm strong enough. She didn't rush me, just sat with me in the silence. Then she said, maybe it's not about strength. Maybe it's about what you're willing to stop accepting. I didn't reply, but her words burrowed into my chest and stayed there. Later that night, as I tucked Emily in, she looked up and whispered, I'm glad we didn't go. I like our day better. And in that moment, I realized something. I wasn't afraid of fighting them. I was afraid of who I'd have to become to win. I didn't rush into anything. That was the first promise I made to myself. No knee-jerk anger, no emotional emails, no shouting matches. I would move smart, not loud. Evelyn had always played the long game. This time, I would too. I started with the will. I called the number listed on the document. The name at the bottom belonged to a retired attorney named Harold Quinn. He sounded surprised when I asked about my father's estate. You're Samantha Green? He asked after a long pause. That name should have never disappeared off the record. We arranged a call. Over a grainy Zoom connection, Harold confirmed everything. Your father was clear about the 50-50 split, and the fund for your daughter. He said she was the brightest light in the family. I blinked. Then why? After he passed, Harold continued, your mother contacted me and said the family wanted to revise things. I refused. She said they'd go with another firm. Did they ever mention why? He sighed. Something about financial instability. They claimed you were not mentally well enough to handle an inheritance. My heart sank. I knew exactly what they'd used. Years ago, I'd written a personal essay for a women's magazine about surviving postpartum depression. It was raw and honest. It went viral. At the time, Evelyn had even texted me. So brave of you to share. I'm proud of you. Turns out it had been ammunition. I dug through old emails, and there it was, a PDF copy of the article, forwarded from an anonymous account with the subject line, FYI, Samantha's instability. The email had been sent to the lawyer who'd eventually handle the revised will. My stomach turned. Who would do that? It could have been Evelyn herself, or my mother. But something about the tone, the timestamp, it pointed elsewhere. I opened another tab, searched my email archives. The sender IP came from a location in Connecticut. I knew who lived there, my ex-husband. He and Evelyn had always gotten along disturbingly well. I closed my laptop and stared at the ceiling. The betrayal came from so many angles, it almost didn't sting anymore. It just settled in. Like mold in the walls of a house I'd pretended was still livable. I could have burned the whole thing down, posted the truth online, screamed it into the void, but I chose something else. I called Maggie Klein, a college friend turned journalist. We hadn't spoken in years, but she still followed me on Instagram. She picked up on the second ring. "Sam, wow, what a throwback. Everything okay?" "Not really," I said. "But I have a story you might want to hear." The next week was a blur of planning. I dug up receipts, emails, timelines. Maggie helped me frame it, not as a vendetta, but a narrative of erasure, of how powerful families rewrite truths to fit their image. And then, fate handed me something unexpected. While skimming Evelyn's social media for inconsistencies, I noticed something strange. The birthday villa, Villa Marquette, had been tagged in one of her posts, boasting about locking in the perfect location months in advance. Curious, I called the venue, pretending to be a prospective client. The receptionist was polite but puzzled. "Actually, the reservation hasn't been finalized. A hold was placed, but no deposit. We've been waiting." I hung up slowly, an idea forming like thunder in my chest. I knew someone who might help. 3 years ago, I'd handled PR for a boutique real estate investor named Joel Moreno. He owed me a favor. "Buy it," I told him, explaining everything in hushed tones. "Don't use my name, just buy it." Joel laughed. "This is wild, Sam, but yeah, sure, why not?" It was done in 48 hours. The villa was his, and by proxy, mine. I didn't tell Evelyn. I let her plan every balloon, every canapé, every live performer, right up until the morning of the party. That's when the venue emailed her. "We regret to inform you that the space is no longer available for your event." I didn't even have to send it. I just waited. At 2:47 p.m., my phone buzzed. "Evelyn, what the hell did you do?" I stared at the message, heart pounding. I could see her now, dressed, heels on, surrounded by confused guests, scrambling for answers. As vendors packed up, and kids asked why there was no cake, but I didn't reply. Instead, I stepped outside into the sunshine and took Emily's hand. We were headed to Villa Marquette. I had a new party planned, this time for every child who'd ever been called too much. And as we drove, I asked myself, if you were me, would you stop here? I didn't call it a revenge party. I called it a celebration. On paper, it was a local arts event. Every voice deserves to be heard, featuring young neurodivergent artists, music, food, and family-friendly workshops. But for those who knew the backstory, it was something far more deliberate. Villa Marquette looked stunning that Sunday. The sun lit up every ivy-wrapped column, every crisp linen table. Instead of princess centerpieces, we had crayon-streaked canvas. Instead of a magician, a young girl with autism led a paint-your-feelings station. Emily's artwork, her rain door sketch and newer pieces, hung proudly in the main hall. People came, families we met through support groups, friends of friends, then strangers. Even local media showed up, thanks to Maggie's quiet but effective press push. A segment producer from a major morning show had RSVP'd. "We're curious," she'd said. "There's something powerful here." Emily stood beside me, holding my hand, cheeks flushed with joy. She wore the same daisy dress. "They're looking at my art," she whispered. "They like it. They love it," I said. And they did. Then came the twist I didn't plan. A man in his 70s, tall and sharp-eyed, approached the microphone during open remarks. "My name is David Horowitz," he said, tapping his note cards. "I was a teacher at Brighton Prep for over 30 years, and I taught someone here that many of you might know, Evelyn Green." Murmurs. Some heads turned. I'm here today not just to support neurodivergent youth, he continued, but to stand against hypocrisy. Because 25 years ago, I caught Evelyn plagiarizing her senior thesis. Gasps rippled through the room. She denied it, he added, and she got away with it. Her parents threatened the board, and I was pressured to retire early. Someone began recording. She destroyed my reputation, he said, voice unwavering. I never thought I'd get to say that aloud, but I saw Samantha's story, and I knew it was time. I didn't breathe, neither did Emily. Minutes later, Evelyn arrived. She stormed into the venue in heels and fury, flanked by 2 assistants and wearing an expression that could curdle milk. "This is trespassing," she shouted. This was supposed to be my daughter's party. The guests froze. Phones went up. A security guard calmly blocked her path. "This is a private, permitted event. You're not on the list." "I own this goddamn villa," she yelled. "No, you don't," I said from the stairs, "and you never did." Her eyes met mine, red and wild. For a second, I saw not the polished PR mogul, but a woman unraveling. Then she lunged forward. 2 guards intercepted. She screamed something incoherent, kicking at the floor as they guided her out. And all of it, every second, was live-streamed by 3 separate influencers attending the event. By that evening, the hashtags #EveryVoice, Deserves and Evelyn Exposed were trending nationally. I didn't watch the clips, Maggie did. "They're everywhere," she texted, your silence at the top of the stairs, iconic. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I felt hollow. Because I knew what was coming next. It arrived within 48 hours. A letter from Evelyn's attorney accusing me of defamation, public humiliation, venue interference, and reputational sabotage. She was demanding a public apology and $250,000 in damages. Maggie advised staying quiet. My lawyer advised preparing countersuits, but I was tired. So when the police showed up at my door with a notice to appear for questioning, citing a complaint of malicious slander, I wasn't surprised, just numb. I recognized the signature on the bottom of the complaint. My ex-husband, the man who'd leaked the article. He'd joined Evelyn's camp fully now, like it was a game he'd always wanted to play. At the station, they asked routine questions. I answered truthfully, calmly, though my hands trembled under the table. When I got home, Emily was curled up on the couch, owl in her arms. She didn't look scared. She looked determined. "I heard Grandma on the phone," she said quietly. "She said you were causing trouble, that you were trying to ruin Aunt Evelyn's life." I sat beside her, not knowing what to say. She turned to me. "Mom, I don't care what they say. I saw what you did. You made me feel like I matter." Her voice shook. "I don't want to be quiet anymore, so please, don't you be quiet either." I broke then, not with fear, not with rage, with pride. Whatever came next, I wasn't alone. The email landed in Maggie's inbox at 6:12 a.m. subject line. Family money, family lies. No signature, no introduction, just one line. "You should look into Evelyn Green's misuse of family trust funds." Attached was a zip file. I was already awake when Maggie called. "There's something you need to see," she said, her voice lower than usual. Inside the file were financial records, bank transfers, scanned contracts, falsified memos. It was meticulous, organized, and damning. Evelyn had been dipping into our father's estate fund for years, labeling expenses as family allocations, but redirecting the money into shell accounts tied to her consultancy business. The dates went back nearly a decade. I don't know who sent this, Maggie added, but they knew exactly where to look. The exposé dropped within 2 days. Maggie released it through her own platform, cross-posted by half a dozen media outlets. Headline, Behind the Filter, How Evelyn Green Built an Empire on Inheritance Lies. It spread like wildfire. News anchors debated the ethics. Bloggers dissected her brand. Comments poured in, some shocked, some gleeful. The story took on a life of its own. But then came the video. A former client of Evelyn's, Margot Dale, a tech entrepreneur, posted a personal testimony. She looked straight into the camera. She pressured me into signing a contract that stripped me of 40% of my own equity, Margot said. She said it was the price of her influence. I was 23, desperate, and terrified to say no. The video went viral, and then another woman came forward, and another. Soon, our anti-toxic family started trending. It wasn't just about Evelyn anymore. It was about people who had stayed silent too long, about survivors of subtle domestic manipulation, the kind that never leaves bruises, only shadows. But it wasn't until the twist came that everything truly broke open. I was sitting at my desk, reading yet another comment thread about Evelyn's downfall, when my phone buzzed. Mom, I think we need to talk. We met at a cafe near her house. She looked smaller than usual, like the headlines had compressed her somehow. I sent the documents, she said without ceremony. I blinked. What? She stirred her tea. I was tired of pretending. She screamed at me last week, called me a burden, said I embarrassed her with my old world beliefs. I'm not as blind as you think. I couldn't speak. I know what she did with your father's will, she added. I didn't agree with it, but I let her lead. I thought I was protecting the family. I see now that I wasn't. Why now? I asked. She looked at me, and for once, her eyes were clear. Because you didn't flinch. You stood there and let her implode. You didn't need my help to fight, but maybe I needed yours to finally wake up. That afternoon, 3 major brands publicly ended partnerships with Evelyn. A charity revoked her speaking engagement. Her agent dropped her. And I stayed silent. No press conference, no victory lap, no Instagram captions. I turned my phone off and took Emily to the botanical gardens. We watched butterflies land on purple asters and talked about colors, not chaos. That day, I chose peace over spectacle. But justice still knocked. 3 weeks later, the county probate court reopened my father's estate case. The new documents were undeniable. The judge ordered a full audit and suspended Evelyn's access to any remaining funds. At the final hearing, I sat across from her in a quiet room. She didn't look at me. Her makeup was still perfect, but her hands wouldn't stop shaking. The court ruled in my favor. My name was restored to the will. The education fund for Emily was reinstated. Evelyn was given 30 days to issue a formal apology or face legal charges for fraud. Her statement came out via a ghostwritten press release. I deeply regret any confusion or pain caused by past misunderstandings regarding our family's private affairs. I am committed to growth and reflection. It was hollow, but it was public. People asked if I would go on TV, if I'd do interviews, book deals, podcasts. I declined them all. Because I'd finally learned not every fight needs to end with a mic drop. Some battles are best closed with silence and a door. The movers left just before sunset. I watched from the porch as the last box was wheeled into the back of the truck, labeled with faded marker, Books, Office, Past Lives. Our new house was quiet, nestled near the edge of a wooded park. No security gates, no shared walls, just trees and wind and space to breathe. I had changed my number a week earlier, deleted old email accounts, left family group chats without a word. My mother texted once. I didn't open it. Evelyn hadn't tried. I didn't need a dramatic exit, just a clean one. It felt strange at first, waking up to a world where their voices no longer reached me. Like white noise had been silenced, and in the stillness, I could finally hear my own thoughts. I spent my mornings with Emily, our days slow and deliberate. We painted the kitchen ourselves, badly. We burned muffins. We got lost in art stores and built blanket forts in the living room. And in the late hours, when she slept, I built something else. A website, a mission, a small community. It was called Noise is Also Music, a safe space for parents of children with ADHD. No filters, no polished parenting advice, just honesty, struggle, celebration. It grew faster than I expected. Posts from strangers around the country, thanking me for saying what they were too exhausted to say. We hosted our first Zoom support group in March. 26 faces, 26 stories, some raw, some angry, all real. One woman said, "My son was told he'd never belong anywhere. Thank you for reminding me that he already does." I didn't cry on camera, but I cried after. A month later, I wrote a letter to Emily. Not to give to her, just to write. I told her the truth, not just about Evelyn or Grandma, or the court battles, but about myself. I told her that I used to believe love meant staying quiet, that I'd thought survival meant shrinking, and that I'd been wrong. "You never needed me to protect you from noise," I wrote. "You just needed me to stop telling you to whisper." I folded the letter and placed it in my journal, a reminder for the days when fear returned in quieter forms. And then life continued, seasons changed, Emily grew taller, her laugh grew louder. I stopped apologizing for both. On the anniversary of the villa event, we did something different. We hosted a gallery. We rented a community center, covered its walls in paper, and invited children to draw, whatever they wanted, however they wanted. Some used crayons, some markers. One boy brought chalk and asked if he could use the floor. We said yes. Emily curated her favorite pieces and hung them on a central wall labeled, "Too loud, too bright, too brilliant." At noon, families gathered, noisy, messy, alive. And then Emily stepped up to the microphone. She wore a blue dress this time, no daisies, just confidence. "When I was little," she began, "someone said I was too loud, that I didn't belong at a party." She paused, looked at me, then back at the crowd. "But today, I don't want to be quiet about who I am. My voice has value, my art has value, and so does yours." Applause filled the room. A few parents wiped their eyes. I stood in the back, arms crossed loosely, watching her own this moment. Not just speak, but command space. I didn't feel victorious. I felt whole. Later that night, as we packed up markers and torn tape, Emily looked at me and said, "That was better than a birthday party." I smiled. "It was your stage," she nodded, "and no one told me to sit down." I looked around the room one last time, walls still stained with creativity and rebellion. "I used to trade my freedom," I whispered, mostly to myself, just to keep a version of family that never really existed. Then I glanced at Emily. "Now," I said, "I'm building a real one. One where no one ever has to ask permission to be seen."